Jason Carter was a hard-working man. He wasn't rich, and he didn't wear fancy clothes. But he had something more valuable: dedication. He worked as a mechanic at a small repair shop, fixing cars every day with his rough and calloused hands. His clothes were always stained with oil and grease, and the smell of motor fluid never really left his skin. Some people might look down on him because of his job, but Jason never cared about that. He worked hard for one reason only: his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was Jason's whole world. Ever since her mother passed away when she was little, it had just been the two of them. Jason did everything he could to make sure she had a good life. He made sure she had clean clothes, good food, and all the love a father could give. But more than anything, he wanted to be someone she could be proud of. One day, Lily came home from school with a big smile on her face. She waved a piece of paper in front of her dad and said, "Dad, my school is having career day next week. Can you come and talk about your job?" Jason wiped his hands on a rag and looked at the paper. "Career day?" he asked. "Yes. Parents come and talk about their jobs. My friends' moms and dads are coming. Doctors, business owners, even a pilot. I want you to come too." Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. Jason hesitated. He knew his job was important, but would the kids at Lily's school understand that? He imagined standing in front of a room full of well-dressed parents, people who had college degrees, people who worked in offices and wore suits. Compared to them, he was just a man who fixed cars. Would Lily be embarrassed if he showed up covered in grease? "I don't know, sweetheart," Jason said slowly. "Maybe they'd rather hear from someone else." Lily frowned. "But I want them to hear from you," she insisted. "Your job is important. You help people every day. If someone's car breaks down, they need you. Without mechanics, nobody could get anywhere." Jason smiled at his daughter's words. To her, he wasn't just a mechanic, he was a hero. "All right," he said finally. "I'll be there." Lily squealed with happiness and hugged him tightly. "You're the best, Dad." Jason chuckled, but deep inside, he still felt unsure. Would the other parents judge him? Would the kids laugh at his dirty clothes? He pushed those thoughts away. None of that mattered. If Lily wanted him there, he would go. He would show up, no matter what. Because at the end of the day, he wasn't doing this for anyone else. He was doing it for his daughter. Little did he know, what was about to happen at Career Day would surprise everyone, including himself. The morning of Career Day arrived, and Jason woke up early. He had promised Lily that he would be there, and he wasn't going to let her down. He planned to get to work early, finish his tasks quickly, and go home to change into something clean before heading to the school. He wanted to look presentable, at least for Lily's sake. But life had other plans. Just as Jason was about to leave his repair shop for the day, the phone rang. It was a woman, her voice filled with panic. Her car had broken down in the middle of the road, and she didn't know what to do. She had her 2 little kids with her, and she was afraid they would be stuck for hours. Jason glanced at the clock. He had just enough time to help her and still make it to the school. Without a second thought, Jason grabbed his tools and rushed out. He found the woman by the roadside, trying to keep her kids calm. The car's engine was overheated, and she looked completely helpless. Jason rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He could see the worry in the mother's eyes, and he knew he had to fix the car fast. Minutes turned into an hour. Sweat dripped down Jason's face as he worked tirelessly under the sun. His hands were covered in grease, and his shirt was soaked with sweat. Finally, after what felt like forever, the car roared back to life. The woman sighed in relief, thanking Jason again and again. She even offered to pay him extra for the emergency repair, but Jason simply smiled and waved it off. "Just take care of your little ones," he said, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. As he watched her drive away, Jason suddenly remembered. Career Day. He checked his watch and his heart sank. He was late. There was no time to go home and change. He was still in his dirty work clothes, his face smudged with oil, and his hands rough from hours of labor. For a brief moment, Jason considered not going at all. What would the teachers and other parents think when they saw him like this? Would the kids laugh at him? Would Lily feel embarrassed? But then he thought of his daughter. She had been so excited for him to come. She wanted him there, no matter what. He had promised her. Taking a deep breath, Jason jumped into his old pickup truck and sped toward the school. He knew he wouldn't look like the other parents. He knew he would stand out. But he also knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was a father, and fathers kept their promises. Little did he know, what was about to happen at that school would leave everyone speechless. When Jason pulled up to the school, his stomach twisted with nerves. The building looked big and fancy, with neatly trimmed lawns and perfectly arranged flower beds. It seemed so different from his dusty, cluttered workshop. He could already imagine what the other parents would think when they saw him. His truck was old and beaten up, not the shiny, brand-new models that the other parents probably drove. He still had grease stains on his shirt, and his hair was messy. The idea of walking into that school in his work clothes made him feel small. As he stepped out of the truck, he could see other parents arriving, dressed in suits and dresses, their shoes polished and hair perfectly styled. Jason couldn't help but notice how different they looked from him. Some parents were already greeting each other, laughing and chatting like old friends. He tried to smile but felt like he didn't belong. He knew it wasn't true, but in that moment, it felt like all eyes were on him, judging him. He walked toward the entrance, his boots crunching on the gravel path, and his heart began to race. As he entered the school, the hallways were bustling with activity. Teachers were running around, adjusting decorations for career day. Jason saw groups of students gathered by different tables, looking excited as they waited for the parents to speak. But as he moved further into the building, he couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was staring at him. A few of the teachers gave him strange looks, probably wondering why a man like him would be speaking at such an important event. Some of the other parents whispered to each other, their voices low but clear enough for Jason to hear. He could catch words like mechanic and dirty thrown in between. Jason's face flushed. He didn't like feeling out of place, but he knew he couldn't back down now. He had promised Lily he would be there, and he wasn't going to disappoint her. He walked toward the classroom where career day was taking place. The door was already open, and Lily was standing by the front, waving excitedly when she saw him. Her smile made all the nerves inside him fade, even if just for a moment. Lily ran up to him, her face lighting up. "Dad, you made it," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. For a second, Jason felt like the only person in the room. Her hug was all he needed to remind him why he was there. "You look great, Dad," she added, though she didn't seem to notice the oil stains or the fact that his shirt was wrinkled from a long day's work. To her, he was perfect just the way he was. Jason smiled down at her and gave her a quick kiss on the forehead. "I'm here, kiddo. Let's do this." As he stepped into the classroom, he saw the other parents already setting up their displays, looking polished and ready. The children gathered around their parents, chatting excitedly. The contrast was sharp. While the other parents looked like they had walked out of a business meeting, Jason was standing there in his work clothes, covered in dirt. The kids glanced at him, then whispered to each other, some of them raising their eyebrows in surprise. Jason tried to ignore the feeling that they might judge him, but he couldn't help but feel nervous. Lily took his hand and led him to the front of the room. Jason took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves that were starting to build up again. He had to remind himself that this wasn't about the clothes or the looks. This was about his job, and it was something that mattered. But as he stood there, surrounded by all the professionals, he couldn't help but wonder, was anyone really going to listen to him? When it was finally his turn to speak, Jason walked to the front of the room, his heart pounding in his chest. His palms were sweaty, and he could feel the eyes of the other parents on him. He glanced down at Lily, who gave him a big, encouraging smile. It made him feel a little better, but the nervousness didn't go away. He adjusted the microphone, trying to make sure it was at the right height, and cleared his throat. Hi, everyone," he began, his voice a little shaky at first. "My name is Jason Carter. I'm a mechanic, and I work at a small repair shop downtown." He could feel the room go quiet as everyone turned to look at him. He wasn't used to speaking in front of a crowd, especially one that looked so different from him. He looked around the room, seeing the polished professionals who had already spoken: doctors, lawyers, business owners, each of them standing confidently in their suits, talking about their careers. Jason didn't have that kind of confidence. He was just a mechanic. But then he remembered Lily's words from earlier. "Your job is important, Dad." She believed in him. And for her, he couldn't back down. "I fix cars," Jason continued, feeling a little more comfortable as he spoke. "I guess you could say I'm a problem solver. When a car breaks down, I'm the one who figures out what went wrong and fixes it so people can keep going with their day." He paused, looking around at the faces in the room. Some of the kids were still whispering to each other, and he could tell that some of the parents weren't quite sure what to make of him. But Jason wasn't about to give up. He decided to go deeper into why his job mattered, not just for cars, but for people. "You know, a mechanic's job isn't just about fixing engines or changing oil," he said, his voice growing a little stronger. "It's about keeping people safe. Think about it. Every car on the road, every family car, every delivery truck, every school bus depends on someone who knows how to fix things when they break. Without mechanics, nobody could get anywhere. No one could get to work. No one could get their kids to school. No one could even get to the store to buy groceries." Jason could see the kids' eyes starting to focus on him. Some of them had their mouths open, listening intently. He smiled and kept going, feeling more confident with every word. "Mechanics work in all kinds of weather," he explained. "We work long hours. We get dirty. And we don't always get a thank you. But it's worth it when I see someone drive away in a car that's working perfectly. I know I've helped make their day easier." A few of the parents who had been whispering before were now listening carefully. Jason noticed one or two of them nodding in agreement. It felt good to be heard. And then, just as he was about to wrap things up, he remembered something important. "I became a mechanic because I wanted to make a living, sure. But more than that, I wanted to be there for my daughter. I wanted to be someone she could rely on, someone who showed her what hard work looks like. I may get dirty every day, but I'm proud of what I do. And I'm proud of what it teaches my daughter about responsibility, dedication, and taking pride in your work." He looked over at Lily, who was standing by the door, smiling brightly at him. It felt like the whole room was quieter now, and even though he was still nervous, Jason couldn't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, they were starting to see things his way. The whispers had stopped. The judging stares had faded. Jason took a deep breath and finished. "So that's my job. And even though it's messy and tough, it's what I love to do. And it keeps me going every day because it's what's best for my family." As he finished speaking, he stepped back from the podium. For the first time that day, he felt a little proud of himself. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was someone who mattered. And maybe, just maybe, the other parents were starting to realize that too. As Jason finished speaking, there was a brief silence in the room. He glanced around, unsure of what to expect. The children were looking up at him with wide eyes, their attention fixed on him for the first time. The parents, who had been so focused on their own well-dressed appearances earlier, now seemed to be reflecting on what he had said. Jason shifted on his feet, unsure whether anyone had really listened. Then, just as he was about to sit down, something surprising happened. The principal, Mrs. Thompson, who had been standing at the back of the room, stepped forward. She looked at Jason with a smile, then turned to the audience. "I think Mr. Carter has made an important point," she said. Her voice was calm but firm, and everyone's attention turned to her. A mechanic may not wear a suit or work in an office, but they play a crucial role in our community. They ensure that our cars are safe, they help families get to where they need to be, and they keep our lives moving forward. Jason couldn't believe what he was hearing. The principal, of all people, was defending him. She wasn't just acknowledging his job, she was celebrating it. And as she spoke, he noticed a few parents nodding in agreement. One woman, who had been talking quietly to her neighbor earlier, now raised her hand and spoke up. "I never thought about it that way," she admitted. "I always thought of mechanics as just people who fix things, but now I see how important their work is. Without them, our world would stop." The other parents nodded, murmuring their agreement. Jason's chest swelled with pride. He had never expected to change anyone's mind, especially not in such a big crowd. He was just a mechanic. What did he really have to offer? But as he looked around, he realized that his words had reached them. He wasn't just talking about fixing cars. He was talking about the value of hard work, about the pride that comes from doing something that helps others, even if it's not glamorous. Lily, who had been standing quietly by his side, beamed at him. Her eyes shone with pride, and Jason could tell that she was more proud of him than ever before. He had done what she had hoped he would. He had made people understand the value of what he did. As the discussion continued, more parents spoke up, sharing their thoughts on the importance of various jobs in the community. One by one, they all acknowledged that while their own professions were important, Jason's work was just as vital. It was a humbling moment for him, hearing people recognize his contribution in such a meaningful way. The conversation began to shift from judging what people wore or how they looked to discussing the real value of hard work. Parents started asking Jason more questions about his job. They wanted to know about the challenges he faced every day, about the kinds of repairs he did, and how he made sure his customers were happy. It felt strange, but in a good way. For the first time, he wasn't just a man covered in grease. He was an expert, someone whose knowledge and skills were respected. The kids, too, were full of questions. They were curious about how cars worked and how Jason was able to figure out what was wrong with them. They asked about engines, about how to change tires, and even about the tools he used. Jason found himself smiling as he answered their questions, explaining in simple terms how he worked. It felt good to share his knowledge, to pass on his skills to the next generation. He could see the spark of interest in their eyes, and he knew that some of them might grow up to be just like him. By the time career day came to an end, Jason felt a sense of accomplishment that he hadn't expected. It wasn't about impressing anyone with fancy clothes or a fancy job title. It was about showing people the value of what he did. He had opened their eyes to the fact that every job, no matter how messy or difficult, was important. Every role played a part in making the world go around. As the parents began to pack up and leave, many of them came over to Jason to thank him. Some apologized for their earlier assumptions, while others simply offered words of encouragement. One man even asked if Jason could help him with a car problem of his own. But the best moment of all came when Lily ran up to him, her face glowing with pride. "Dad, you were amazing. I told everyone you'd do great, and you did." Jason looked down at her, his heart full. In that moment, he knew that no matter what anyone else thought, he was exactly where he needed to be, doing what he loved and making his daughter proud. And that, he realized, was more important than anything else. As Jason and Lily walked out of the school together, Jason felt lighter than he had all day. The nerves that had weighed him down earlier had disappeared. He had done something he never thought possible. He had shown the world that his job, no matter how unglamorous, was something to be proud of. He hadn't just been a mechanic. He had been an educator, a father, and a role model. Lily walked beside him, swinging her backpack as she hummed happily. Every now and then, she would glance up at him with a huge smile on her face, and Jason couldn't help but smile back. Her joy was infectious, and it made everything feel worth it. The long hours at the shop, the grease stains on his clothes, the worry about not fitting in, all of it faded into the background as he focused on her happiness. "Dad, I'm so proud of you," Lily said, looking up at him with sparkling eyes. "You were awesome today." Jason chuckled, ruffling her hair. "You know, kiddo, I was nervous the whole time. But I guess I got through it because of you. You kept cheering me on." Lily grinned and waved her hand dramatically. "Of course. You're my dad. You can do anything," she said, sounding like she truly believed it. Jason's heart swelled. He knew how much this day had meant to her. It had been her idea to invite him, and she had believed in him from the very beginning, even when he wasn't sure he could do it. And now, it seemed that everyone else had come around too. As they reached their old, reliable truck in the parking lot, Jason paused for a moment. He looked around at the other cars, the shiny, new ones parked next to his. He had never been one to care much about appearances, but today, something felt different. It wasn't just about the truck, or his clothes, or even the career day event. It was about the change he had sparked in the people around him. The way they saw him not as just a mechanic, but as someone who made a difference. He climbed into the driver's seat, and Lily hopped in beside him, settling into the passenger seat with a satisfied sigh. As Jason started the engine, he noticed how much quieter the truck seemed compared to earlier. It wasn't just the engine. It was the way everything felt. There was a new kind of peace within him, a quiet confidence that he hadn't had before. "Do you think the other parents will talk about you when they get home?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. Jason smiled, his fingers gripping the steering wheel. "I hope so. But more than that, I hope they remember that every job counts. Whether you're fixing cars or running a business or saving lives, what you do matters. And what I do, fixing cars, makes a difference in people's lives. I want them to remember that." Lily nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I think they'll remember you, Dad. You were different. You didn't try to act like someone else. You were just you." Jason laughed softly. "I guess being yourself is all you really need." They drove home in silence for a while, enjoying the comfortable quiet that had settled between them. When they arrived, Jason parked the truck in the driveway and turned off the engine. He looked over at Lily, who was already halfway out of the truck. "Come on, let's go inside and have some dinner," he said, reaching over to grab her backpack. As they walked inside together, Jason felt a deep sense of contentment. He had done something important today, not just for himself, but for his daughter and for everyone who had listened. It wasn't just about being recognized. It was about being true to himself. It was about knowing that no matter what anyone else thought, he had a purpose, and he was proud of the work he did every day. As they sat down at the dinner table, Lily looked up at him, her face still glowing with excitement. "You're the best, Dad. I'm so lucky to have you." Jason smiled, his heart full. "No, sweetheart, I'm the lucky one, because you make me want to be the best I can be." And as they enjoyed their meal together, Jason knew that he had given Lily something far more valuable than just a lesson in career day. He had shown her that being yourself, no matter how different you may seem, was the most important thing of all. And that was a lesson that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The days following career day were a bit of a whirlwind for Jason. Word seemed to spread quickly about his appearance at the school event. He wasn't sure how, but somehow, people in the neighborhood started recognizing him more often. It wasn't just the parents from career day, but even people he'd worked with before, customers, friends of customers, and people passing by his shop. One afternoon, as Jason was closing up his repair shop for the day, a man walked in, looking familiar but not quite irregular. The man was dressed in business clothes, much like the ones Jason had seen on the other parents at the school event. He approached the counter with a friendly smile and extended his hand. "Jason Carter, right?" the man asked. Jason looked up, a little surprised. "You spoke at career day last week, didn't you?" Jason blinked. "Yeah, I did. How did you know?" "I was there. My daughter, Emma, is in your daughter's class," the man explained, his smile warm. "I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't think much about mechanics before that day. But after hearing you talk, I realized how much you do, how important your job is. I've even been telling my friends about it." Jason felt a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. He wasn't used to being praised for doing his job. He did what he did because it was his responsibility, because he loved his work, and because it supported his family. But hearing it from someone else, especially a person who had once looked at him with doubt, felt different. "Thanks," Jason said, offering a small smile. "I just wanted to show people that every job matters, no matter what it looks like." The man nodded. "It definitely made an impact. My wife and I even decided to bring our car to you next time it needs repairs, just because of what you said." Jason was taken aback. "You mean you're going to trust me with your car?" "Absolutely," the man said with a firm nod. "Your work speaks for itself. And after hearing you talk about the importance of your job, I realized I should respect it more." Jason wasn't sure how to respond. He had always taken pride in his work, but this kind of recognition felt different. It wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about changing how people thought about his profession. The conversation shifted to the work Jason had done on his car. The man needed a few repairs, and Jason assured him it would be no trouble at all. They made arrangements to meet later in the week for the work to be done. The man smiled again, shook Jason's hand, and left the shop with a renewed sense of respect. Later that evening, Jason sat down at the kitchen table, reflecting on the strange encounter. He had never expected anything like that to come from Career Day. He'd thought it was just about talking to a group of kids. But now, it seemed that he had sparked something deeper in people. He had started a conversation about the value of hard work and the importance of every job, no matter how small or dirty it might seem. When Lily came in from playing outside, she noticed him sitting quietly at the table, a thoughtful look on his face. "What's up, Dad?" she asked. Jason looked up at her and smiled. "Just thinking about how much can change when you show up and speak your truth." Lily raised an eyebrow, sitting down across from him. "What do you mean?" "Well, I guess I didn't realize how important it was for people to understand the value of what I do. After that day at school, people have been saying things to me that I didn't expect. Things like they didn't realize how much mechanics matter." Lily's face lit up. "I knew you'd change their minds. You always tell me that being true to yourself is the best way to be. And now I get it. You made them see you for who you really are." Jason chuckled, proud of her insight. "I guess so. I just never thought that showing up and being myself would make such a difference." "You're my hero, Dad," Lily said with a grin, her eyes shining with pride. Jason felt a warm rush of gratitude in his chest. He had always tried to be the best father he could be. But now he realized that by being himself, by showing his daughter that his job mattered, he had made a bigger impact than he ever expected. And it wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about teaching her, and others, that hard work and honesty were the things that really made the world go around. For the first time in a long time, Jason felt truly seen, not just as a mechanic, but as a man who was proud of who he was and what he did. And that sense of self-worth, that knowledge that his work had meaning, was all he really needed to keep going. The weeks after Career Day continued to bring small but significant changes for Jason. The recognition he had received didn't just come from the people who had attended the event. It seemed to ripple through the community in ways he hadn't anticipated. His regular customers were more friendly, some even going out of their way to show appreciation for his hard work. New clients were walking into his shop, and each time he fixed a car, he noticed the trust they had in him was different. Jason was used to working hard, to doing his job without much fuss or recognition, but something had shifted. He now realized how important it was to feel valued, not just for the work he did, but for who he was. It wasn't about having a big title or a fancy office. It was about showing up every day and making a difference in people's lives, no matter how small the task seemed. One evening, As Jason was finishing up in the shop, Lily came in with a big smile on her face. She had her homework finished and was excited about something. "Dad, you'll never guess what happened today," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. Jason put down the wrench he was holding and wiped his hands on a rag. "What happened, kiddo? I told my whole class about you. I said you were the best mechanic ever, and that you taught me how to work hard, no matter what you do," Lily said, her voice full of pride. Jason's heart swelled with happiness. He had always hoped to be a role model for Lily, but hearing that she was talking about him like this, sharing what she had learned, made everything feel so much more real. "I'm proud of you for sharing that," Jason said, giving her a smile. "But you know, kiddo, it's not just about being good at what you do. It's about being proud of it, too. That's the most important thing." Lily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I get it. You're proud of fixing cars, and I'm proud of you for doing it. I don't care if you're not wearing a suit or working in an office. You help people every day." Jason chuckled, reaching out to give her a high five. "That's right, sweetheart. And I'm proud of you, too. You've always believed in me." The following weeks were full of small moments that reminded Jason of how far he had come. He was still the same mechanic he had always been, still working hard every day. But now there was a sense of pride that had been added to his routine. When he looked at his shop, it didn't feel like just a place where he fixed cars. It felt like a place where he could make a difference in his community. The people who came in weren't just customers. They were part of a bigger story, a story that Jason was proud to be part of. One day, a mother and her young son came in with their car, which had broken down. The mother seemed a bit frazzled, unsure of what to expect. Jason greeted her warmly, and as he worked on the car, he struck up a conversation with the boy. "What's your name?" Jason asked, smiling at the young boy, who was staring intently at the tools in Jason's hands. "I'm Jake," the boy said shyly, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Well, Jake, I bet you like to learn how things work, right?" Jason asked, holding up a tool. Jake nodded enthusiastically. "I like to fix stuff. My dad taught me how to use a wrench." Jason smiled, realizing how much of an impact he could have on the next generation. Just like he had been learning to fix cars since he was young, now he could pass on that knowledge to others. "Well, I'll show you a few things while I work. Maybe one day you'll be a mechanic too." The boy's face lit up. "That would be awesome. Can I help?" Jason chuckled. "Of course, just watch and learn for now. But you've got the right idea. Fixing things is all about being patient and figuring out the right way to do it." The mother smiled, watching them. She had seen how well Jason interacted with her son, and she was grateful that he made the experience enjoyable. By the time Jason finished the repairs, the car was running smoothly, and the family was ready to go. The mother thanked him and paid for the service, but before they left, she stopped. "Jason," she said, smiling warmly, "I want you to know how much we appreciate your work. It's not just about fixing cars. It's about the care you put into it. You made us feel comfortable, and I'm sure Jake will remember you for a long time." Jason smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Thanks. That means a lot to me." As the family left, Jason felt a sense of fulfillment that he couldn't quite describe. He wasn't just fixing cars. He was teaching, inspiring, and making people's lives a little bit easier. It wasn't always glamorous, but it was real. And that, to Jason, was what mattered most. As he cleaned up his tools that night, he realized that the greatest lesson he had learned through all of this was that it didn't matter what anyone else thought. What mattered was showing up every day.